Ahoy, mateys.
Please do that.
Yeah. Alright guys, in this video we have a 2005 Legacy GT. This thing is pretty rad. It's a bit of a time attack weapon. So it's got the 6-speed, and our mission is to rectify this rust, a little more bonus rust, and this rust. So we're going to be taking out the windshield to do that. And then we're going to be repainting the whole roof after we fix the rust in the front. And the spoiler is pretty cool. I'm pretty jealous of it. I wouldn't mind one on my Legacy. This is actually a wrap, which that was like a really good color match for a wrap. Since we're painting the roof, we're gonna paint the spoiler, so we're gonna get the wrap off that. And then he's cut in some little bumper vents here on the rear. Again, with the bumper vents, they are also just wrapped, so he was asking if we could paint them. They're glued in place, so we're not going to be able to take them out, but now I guess I have no choice but to paint them, so no problem. Moving up to the front here, this car has 400,000 kilometers on it. The bumper, I don't know how well it's showing up in the video, but is very battered, but in decent condition. So we're gonna actually clean up the bumper, fix all the chips, and repaint the bumper as well. And then there's one more hidden issue with this car that we've got to fix as well. And here is our final mission to repair. So as you can see, there's supposed to be a bottom to this rad support bracket that should attach to the rad support. That should be here, but it's not. And along with the other side, there's remnants of a bracket here, but like it's not doing any bracketing anymore. She's pretty toast. The rad is probably drooping quite a bit because of this. So luckily I have a donor rad support in the back. What I'm gonna do is only replace what I have to. Obviously from here up is all good condition. It's really just these top and bottom sections here and where the brackets mount and stuff like that. So I imagine I'm gonna get into drilling out the spot welds, doing some creative maneuvers to get the bad part of this out, and the same with removing it from the good rad support and throw it in. So first thing I want to do is get my coolant out of the rad and get the rad out of the car, get the bumper off the car, and kind of get ready to jump into it. All right, we got some little quick release tabs there. Now I'll quickly release the bumper so we can get into the rad support. Then up in the front here, I've begun to mark my spot welds there. So I'm gonna start drilling out the bottom of this rad support here. Here we are with the bottom of the rad support removed. So all I've done here is drill out the spot welds, connecting it anywhere. And out she comes. As you can see, it wasn't much of a support. So now with the donor rad support, I'll do the exact same thing, except I won't cut it in half. I will leave it intact and we'll slip her on in. But before we can slip our new one in, we've got to clean up anything that was inside of the frame there before we put the new piece on. So I'm going to go ahead and flap disc this or maybe the die grinder, whatever I can use to get in there. Here we have the donor rad support. So what I'm going to do on this, same process as removing the one from the car. I'm going to drill out all the spot welds, remove it just the same, but like I said, I'm not going to cut it in half. And we'll slip her on into the other one after we've got it all prepped, and we can weld her in. There we are with the donor piece in. So before I actually get into fitting this to the car, I'm going to take this out and clean up anything that needs to weld to the car, get inside of there the best I can while it's out because you won't be able to access it later. And then lastly, in these little holes, flood her out with some oil. If that was done in the first place, I wouldn't be doing this job. All right, now with the support all sanded and bare metaled to wherever we have to do spot welds, it's time for the vice grip. So with the vice grips, what I'm gonna do is start to lock it in side to side, get it nice and center. From there, like, you know, you kind of peeled this off so it's not like totally flat where it should be, but get it all centered. And then from there, you can lock everything down to where it's actually supposed to be and begin to tack in spots side to side, make sure you're all symmetrical, and then carry on with filling in the rest of the spot welds. Alright, now I'm working my way along the bottom here. Trickier to film. We got a couple more going down there, one there. One there looks so good you can't even tell. With the support all buttoned up, I've just gone over, done a nice little clean in my prep there, and now I'm ready to paint on the epoxy. So I'm actually going to do this with a brush just because it's a little less invasive than masking it to spray it and works just the same. This stuff is actually designed to paint on with a brush or a roller if you want. It's super industrial. Can also be sprayed out of a gun. I was gonna go ahead and use black because I figured that would be the best looking rather than the gray. So here we go. All right, now we got the brackets back in here for the rad itself. So we are ready to throw the rad in the car, and that completes the front end of this job, and onto the roof now with some sandblasting. All right, now with the front end done, the wing prepped, and the bumper prepped, the rear bumper vents are prepped. Now it is time to begin on the roof. So we've got some very typical of a bad windshield job rust going on here, and here, and here. Then a few scattered stone chips, pretty typical. Goal with this, I'm gonna try and cut around the windshield to start, but I'm gonna leave it in place kind of as a sand stopper. And then I'm gonna pull it outside and sandblast these spots while the windshield's still in so I don't make a huge mess. Then I'm gonna pull the windshield out and do underneath and anything else we find along there. So we're using this windshield removing tool. It's a tool aid. It does work all right. The blade that came with it was horrible. I replaced the blade with some torpedo blades and they seem to work pretty well. There we are after the sandblast, so we had a little bit of a burn through there. This was definitely the worst spot. It is quite porous with rust there. Middle guy, not too bad. And then over to the driver's side, okay-ish. If anyone knows how legacies go together with respect to the roof and the pillar, is this factory, because there's like a little line underneath where it isn't even welded, and that's where it's starting to rust from. Kind of weird. But now I can, like the windshield's out, we had it out doing this. I just kept it there to not put more sand in the car. Now we'll clean these up, clean up down here, get all the urethane off, and we can start to body work on the roof before primer. Ahoy, mateys.
Please do that.
Yeah. So there with our blasted spots, we had a couple places where we had some pores that burned through. It was kind of weak, so we melted some steel into there. Everything else is bare metalled and de-urethaned. Now we're gonna go ahead and fill these spots and get into some epoxy primer, and we can begin to block the roof off and prepare for paint. Ahoy, mateys! I was so in the zone doing this body work on the roof that I forgot to film some of it. So after a few coats, we have this nice and smooth. Now we're gonna go ahead and epoxy the whole roof here. So I've just blown all the dust off the car. I'm about to wheel it into the booth and begin my masking here. Epoxy filler primer on there. Everything looks really good. I am ready to start blocking this down to get it ready for paint. Roof is pretty much prepped for paint now. I went ahead and painted the bumper just because I didn't want to crowd the booth doing the roof and the bumper at the same time, because I do have some other things to do as well. At that point, because silver can be kind of tricky, I threw the bumper on the car. It looked pretty good. I had the customer come check it out to see what he thought of the match. He was digging it, and at that point, he really liked the car with the roof rails off and has now asked me to shave the holes so the roof rails don't go back on. So there is 6 holes. This is tape in the hole currently. There's 6 holes up and down the left and right side. What I'm going to do, they are rather accessible from the inside, is I'm going to cut some little tiny patches, tape them in from the inside, weld them from the top, and then we'll probably need to do a little skim of filler, and we're going to have to do a bit more filler primer after that to seal it all up. So I'm going to go ahead first, start taping them up in there, and get to welding. Alright, so there's our holes from the inside, all the way up to the front. This copper looking stuff is some weld through primer. What I'm going to do now is tape the little pieces I've made to the back side of the roof here, and then I can weld it from the top. Alright, there's one strip, or one side welded. So there's my little patch. What I've done is taken off the tape. I'm going to grind these flat on the top first, then I'll come back down to the bottom and paint. The reason I want to do that is I don't want to burn my paint if I put it on first. So I'm going to go ahead and grind the top. Here we are with the welds all ground down, so they look super good. These are quite small holes, so if you know what you're doing welding, you can get this near a point of not needing body filler. I, however, am not at that point. Now that we're done with the work on the top, what I'm gonna do here is blast these with some etch primer, just in an aerosol can, and then any sort of aerosol can over top of them, just to seal up this bare metal. The metal that's sandwiched there does have a weld through primer, so that's totally fine, but just the backside here, I don't really want the car starting to drip rust through the headliner. Now I'm going to feather out my transitions here a bit, get some filler on here, and then we can go over with the final prime and should be ready for paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side here. All right, now we've got some filler on the spots, so we're gonna go ahead and block them, starting with a pretty rough grit so I can get them shaped up. From there, we'll see if we need another coat, go from there and get into some filler primer. So here we are with the bodywork all sanded down, everything looking good, feeling good. Now I'm gonna mix up some epoxy and just spray it right here. There we are with all the inside now painted. Completely sanded. The rail looks really good. The rest of the roof is all sanded. So now I'm going to pull the car out, blow it off, and get it into the booth for paint. All painted, all cleared, everything looks pretty good. You definitely dig the roof shave mod here. I feel like this is something eventually I would do to my own legacy if I ever got into repainting it. As for the finish, looks really good. As good as a one shot can go. This definitely doesn't need any sort of correction. Prior silver has really been a challenge for me. Very hard not to get stripes. So this is without a doubt the largest panel one piece that I've ever had to paint. Being silver, I really had to be cautious to make sure I didn't get any stripes. And it does look fantastic. So I'm really happy with myself for achieving that. Oh yeah, and almost forgot almost every time I painted to put paint and clear coat on these, but I did do it on both of them. So now I'm gonna go ahead and unmask the car and we can get into reassembly and see how this looks all back together. we are with the finished product. Looking really good. We've got a Basin R matey lip on there. Put in some Cool Dude fog lights. New headlights, new grille, new mesh, new scoop trim. And then the roof rail delete, looking sweet. Windshield back in. And the spoiler all painted, and the vents. Alrighty guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and till the next one.